Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
That's such a dramatic picture of you. I love it.
Am I frozen? Are you frozen?
I'm
I
not.
don't know what happened.
Are you? It seems like you're good.
Uh-oh.
Huh, so you can't, you're not. Hi, Miriam. Carrie, are you frozen? Or are you okay?
I'm here. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi, Becky.
I'm working on the handoff to Carrie. But she was having a little,
You can hand it off to me.
I got it. I got it. Sorry.
okay.
I was connected to the wrong internet.
Okay. And Miriam, you want to be a co-host?
Yes, thank you.
Oops, it didn't work right the first time. It went to pin. Oh, because Carrie has to do it.
Oh, well,
I made you the host, so I'm nothing now.
here it goes.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Name. Harry, I emailed you. What's your availability tomorrow to mail the permits out?
I can mail them whenever I'm off tomorrow.
Okay. I am not available in the morning, so I would need to get them to you in the afternoon. Would that be okay?
What time roughly?
Maybe 2 o'clock?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. We'll see. If I have lots of energy tonight, I'll try to get them out. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Miriam. How you doing?
I'm good.
Happy Thursday before Memorial Day.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe we're already this far into the year.
I have to go change glasses. I've been advised by family members that I should not wear these blue light glasses because they glow on Zoom. Right back. Oh, there's a better. Hi, Beth, Mary. Okay. Well, it's 6 o'clock. And we have a quorum. Mary David, Beth Wilson, and I are here, and I believe Scott Connon and Robin Harrington will be joining soon. Here comes Robin. So I'm going to call the meeting to order as soon as Robin logs in. Hi, Robin. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order, the Shutesbury Conservation Commission for May 25th. And as I mentioned for the recording, Miriam DeFont, Beth Wilson, Robin Harrington, and Mary David are present. Scott Kahn is missing, but I think he is going to be joining us in a little while. So first on our agenda is a public hearing for an amended order of conditions for 64 Cushman Road being proposed by Dandelion Energy and Nate Hurd for a geothermal system. So hi, Nate and Hannah.
Hello, I'm Hannah Kowalski. I'm the representative for Dandelion Energy. Let me share my screen. So what we have here is the geothermal plan for the work at 64 Cushman Road. Before, what we had proposed was the 2 boreholes, a 75-foot trench which paralleled the driveway, and then a spoils container that would be built up in the yard. What we are now proposing is we're going to instead cut the trench along the driveway, so that will require some asphalt cutting here, but we'll make the trench shorter. So instead of the 75 trench, it's around 65 feet now, and we're changing equipment. So before it was a standard drill rig, now we're going to be using one of our Kamakio drill rigs. I mentioned this with our previous wetlands job, but the benefit of this is that there's a diverter at the mouth of the borehole. So instead of the spoils, water, drill cuttings, etc., I apologize if you can hear my dogs in the background, going around the borehole, it goes through this hose into a solid dumpster, which then can be removed off-site. That way, we don't have to worry about, leaking or transporting material after the work is complete. We can just haul this dumpster out. Much like the other wetlands job, if we start running into an excess of water, we have a plan to put silt bags in the front yard. What we would do there is we would pump a small amount of water over time, allow that to drain, filter out, so it'll just be the water. All of the sediment will stay in the bags, and then the water will be theoretically allowed to be reabsorbed by the ground, heading back downstream, which again would be towards this little pond and wetland area. Any questions?
And Hannah, just to confirm, I emailed you about this, that the proposed alterations in the buffer zone in riverfront area is 150 square feet. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And again, you're going to be using staked erosion slocks around where the well digging area is.
Correct.
Spoils container.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And because I wasn't sure about from the previous application, I understand they're going to be repaving the driveway, but in areas that are not part of the asphalt driveway, what will be the treatment? Is it going to be seeded? Is there going to be wood chips?
We're going to do wood chips.
Okay.
Same as what we were planning with doing at the Tom Call job.
All right. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Nope.
Nope. All right. It was pretty straightforward. We're getting good at this with you guys.
We're trying.
Yeah, just keep. Okay. Sorry, I'm just double checking, see if I have any other questions from my notes. I do not. Okay. Well, I feel like I've got enough information. So and just to be clear, we are issuing this amended order of conditions under both the Wetlands Protection Act and under the Shutesbury bylaw. So we'll be issuing 2 orders of conditions under each. So the documentation will have to both be recorded at the registry. So you'll get
Can
two,
do.
just so you're aware of that.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
Okay, all right. So does somebody want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the amended order of conditions for 64 Cushman Road.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, David,
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington. Robin? You're muted.
sorry, aye.
And Wilson.
Aye.
And I don't think Scott's here, right? I can't see.
I wonder
Okay.
if he thought, well, maybe he thought 7.
No, I told him. Well, anyway, he was on the road, so he may be unavailable.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just go through the special conditions and then well, actually what I'm gonna do first is I have put together a order of conditions for the bylaw, which essentially has the same information that goes in the online version. But I'm going to share this with the commission so you guys can look at it. I did share a draft document with you earlier and got some feedback for some corrections. So can everybody see it?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so there's an amended order of conditions, just keeping the DP file number for clarity's sake. The applicant, same information is from the original order of conditions. The expiration will be the same as the original permit. So it was issued on May 27th last year, so it'll be May 27, 2025. And here are the documents, findings. So what I did here was I added all of the values from the bylaw, since those are somewhat different wording than under the act. And I did not check off historic values, aesthetics, aquaculture, agriculture, and recreation. I figured those were not part of the application review. So it's approved. Then under resource area impacts, because we protect the aura as a protected resource, I'm also listing square feet of resource of buffer zone impact, or aura, which stands for adjacent upland resource area. It is a term that a number of conservation commissions are using to describe buffer zone because it's a more accurate description. Any questions about that?
Oh, that looks great.
All right, and then there's the general conditions, which were basically taken from the general conditions in the order of conditions under the wetlands Form 5. Nothing's changed here. And then special conditions, which are attached, and then the signatures and recording information, similar to what's under the Wetlands Act form. Wetlands Protection Act form. Any questions about that or comments from the commission?
No.
Oh, all right, let's take a look at the special conditions then. I think this is it. Here we go. Again, it's very similar to the original order of conditions. So I just took all the same findings of facts. Let me try to get rid of the highlighting. I have to futz with that. I don't know why I can't get rid of that. Trench, change the measurements. Actually, the beginning of the trenches, this is not right. It changed, wasn't it? Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
Miriam, the beginning of the trench is the same spot, so that number would be fine. It's just the end of the trench that changed.
Okay. And these distances, 120, 136.
Yeah, those are from the beginning of the trench. That's the furthest point. So because we changed where it ended, those numbers should still be accurate.
but you moved the trench farther away from the wetlands, so the number shouldn't be 74. I feel like I've got a different version.
Oh, maybe. Let me flip
Um,
quick. Oh, sorry. Didn't realize I still had control there. My apologies.
let me check. It's in the site plan. Does anybody have a site plan open that can look at it quickly? It helped.
No.
Was the amended site plan. Okay, I'm pulling it up. It is. All right, it is 74 feet from trench start, 88, 74, 88. So that is right. Okay, my bad.
Doesn't hurt to double check.
Okay, all right. And then here's a description of the procedure. There's 2 phases to the project. All the sequence, such that the well and trench work are to be completed in 2 phases with separate erosion control methods due to concerns about management of water. They'll pump through a spoils container and silt bags. For the first phase, staked erosion socks are to be used. Second phase, silt fence. Hannah, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just, it looks good. I was just reading spoils container and didn't know if you wanted to describe the metal container, but I think it works the way that it is.
Okay. All right, and then all of the conditions, I think, are essentially the same. I don't think we're changing anything.
I would agree there.
So there's no questions from the commission.
No.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
A motion to approve the conditions attached to the order of conditions at 64 Cushman Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much.
And we'll send you a digital copy as well as sending it by registered mail.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right, we have a public hearing at 6:30. So in the meantime, we can go through some other parts of the agenda. I'm going to pull the agenda up for a sec. Why don't we go through minutes for starters? We have minutes to approve for an executive session for 11/10/22. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
Look
Mm.
good to me.
Two.
Motion to approve.
Yeah, we need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve 11:10 minutes,
Executive session minutes. Yeah.
executive session minutes.
And a second.
I second.
And I think Scott Kahn is just coming on. Sorry, give me a second. Scott, is that you who just signed on? Maybe not. All right. Well, if it is Scott, we're just reviewing the executive session minutes from 11/10/22. And we have a second. So David. Mary?
Oh, do I need a second?
I think we did have a second, didn't we? No?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did.
Aye.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
aye.
David. DeFont, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, then we have minutes from January 30th. This was the joint meeting we had with Leverett and Wendell Conservation Commissions. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
Look good to me. Make a motion to approve the 1:30:23 minutes.
Okay, second.
I second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Khan, Is Con there? Nope, I don't
Hey,
know.
Miriam, I'm on too.
There he is.
Hi, Scott.
Hey.
We're reviewing the
Sorry,
minutes. We were reviewing the
okay,
minutes for
sounds
January.
good.
What? Okay,
Sorry, there's a delay. I'm good.
okay, so you're voting yes, and Wilson.
Aye.
All right, then we have minutes for April 27th. Everybody have a chance to review them? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th, 2023.
Second,
Okay, David,
aye.
Defont, I, Harrington. if you would-
Abstain, I missed that meeting.
Okay, Con? I don't know if Scott was there.
Aye.
Were you there, Scott? April 27th? I can't remember. Maybe you were.
I think I was.
And Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. We don't have the minutes yet for May 11th, so we're going to table that. We've got some emergency certifications to approve. And I'm going to suggest that we talk about the Montague Road culvert, Montague Pond, Dudley Pond ones after the public hearings, but why don't we take the Lake Wyola State Park DCR emergency certification? This is for the demolition of a universal access deck dock that is deteriorating, and they are going to install a new one, but right now they just wanted to demolish it. So Mary and I did a site visit, and I think we shared some pictures. So what we need to do is ratify the emergency certification since it was already issued.
A motion to ratify the emergency certification for the dock at Lake Wyola State Park demolition.
Is there a second?
Second.
David,
Aye.
Defont, I, Harrington,
Aye.
Con,
Aye.
and Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. Let's go through some site visits since we still have a few more minutes. 2 Lakeview Road was a building permit that Mary and I visited for a garage. Do you want to add any comments to it, Mary?
Nope. Looked good.
We did see an isolated vegetated wetland, but it was more than 100 feet away, so approved the building permit. And then today, Robin and I visited 530 West Pelham Road, where there's a building permit application for a ground mounted solar system. And this was a little complicated because we did
Right.
see what looked like a very large isolated wetland in the tree line. And part of it was, there were 2 sections of it. Part of it was clearly, the bigger section was more than 100 feet away from the area where they're going to be working. But I was a little equivocal about whether the near wetland area was actually an isolated wetland or not. It was a little more sparsely vegetated with ferns and wetland plants, and we didn't check soils. So I don't know what the commission wants to do with that.
Is that part definitely within 100 feet of where the work's gonna be?
The smaller part was definitely within 100 feet.
Yeah.
And, within the tree line, there were, a lot of ferns, patches of dense ferns, and there were some other wetland plants that and right along the tree line was jewelweed that was coming
Right.
up. And I'm just blocking on the name of do you guys remember the hydrophytic plant that we saw at the Cooleyville Road, 70 Cooleyville Road? Remember there was a plant that we had identified that was right along an isolated wetland. we found a lot of it and I just hadn't had a chance before this meeting to look up the name and I couldn't remember it. So yeah, there were wetland indicators for sure, all within the woods around this property.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like in those situations where we're pretty sure that it could be a wetland, it's kind of on the homeowner to get a delineation done, even if it's just, you know, a short section that's the closest to where the work's gonna happen, you know, just a 50-foot line or whatever of delineation, which really doesn't cost that much to a homeowner. That's kind of what we need, because it's not, you know, we need to know whether it's a wetland or not.
Makes
Right.
sense to me. We agree?
Yes.
Okay, I will communicate that. So we've got some other site visits that we need to schedule. We had to cancel the 678 Pratt Corner Road site visit because because of our availability. So do we want to try and look at our books before we open the next public hearing and see if we can find a time? Seems like the landowner's pretty flexible about times. It'd be good for Beth to be able to make it. So I guess Beth, some of this depends on your availability.
Sorry, which site?
This is the wetland restoration site where we have to do periodic site visits to monitor.
Oh, 678, Pratt Corner
Enforcement
Road.
order.
Let's see. I could do like Wednesday at 3:45 or even later that anytime after work on Wednesday, this Wednesday.
Yeah, a little later would be better for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do you guys want? Marion, Robin, anybody
I
else?
am leaving Wednesday morning and not getting back until the following Monday evening. I
Okay.
have an appointment on Tuesday morning. So I'm only free on Monday and Tuesday afternoon next week. But feel free to
Yeah, I could do
go
Wednesday.
another.
Well, why don't we, could we do like 4:30?
Yep.
That's
That would
good
be
for
a
me.
little easier for me. Okay, I'll confirm with the landowner, but I'm pretty sure it'll work out for him. Okay, thank you. We've got that done. And then there's a few other site visits that are small ones. I'm still waiting on landowners to get back to us with information. The one that is we do need to kind of get a plan for is, excuse me, DCR has an NOI they've submitted for a bridge replacement in the DCR land forest off of Camel Brook. And we'll probably have the public hearing at our first meeting in June. I haven't given them the date, but I'm imagining our public hearing is gonna be June 8th. So I think that site visit is gonna take about an hour because it's a little bit of a walk into the woods. What do you want to do? Do you want to try and go for the like the afternoon of June 7th?
What day of the week is that?
That would be a Wednesday, June 7th.
So what meeting is it gonna be on? The
It's gonna be for our
June 8th,
meeting.
June 8th meeting?
Yep.
Yeah, so the 7th is great. I like doing them as close to the meeting as possible.
So we could do it earlier that day. So Beth, is 3:45 good for you?
Yeah,
Okay, I will email you guys with a plan, a map of where we can rendezvous and where a map, because we have to hike in a little bit. I think the hike is on a trail or a road, an access road. It's not bushwhacking and but it's a little bit of a walk. So it's an even trail, I think. Okay.
Okay.
Three,
All right, got that. So, I guess maybe here's one thing we can talk about for 5 minutes. I spoke with Tim Hunting today. And this was about under Beaver Dam emergency certifications, because we had an emergency certification for a Beaver Dam for the Lakeview culvert a few weeks ago. And Tim Hunting and the Highway Department want to install a stone diversion structure in the upstream area, upstream of the Lakeview Road culvert. So it would be in Fisk Brook, in that little kind of pondish area with, it has an island in it that's just upstream where near Pine Brook Camp. And they want to put a line of large boulders in the pond to divert beaver from the culvert. So the question is, what kind of permit would this require? Would this require an RDA or an NOI?
So would that block off that area for people?
No,
kayaking?
no, it would be, the goal would be that it would minimize the need for any beaver dam
Mhm.
breaching in the culvert. It would keep it open. And he has to get consent of the landowner, and understands that a permit needs to be but it's an alteration within a resource area. So I'm thinking probably it's going to require an NOI.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I think just, yes, because it's so it's gonna be complicated.
Right.
Well, I will communicate that to him. Yeah, I think that there needs to be some design work involved to make sure that, it's going to work and not cause flooding elsewhere upstream around it, because it'll get built up with beaver dam material. So I think there needs to be some careful thought about it.
Yeah, and careful thought about how they're gonna do it. What equipment they're gonna use and everything to minimize bank impact and things like that. That's why I'm picturing a notice of intent too, just for a good description of how they're gonna go about doing it.
All right, I will share that. Looks like somebody's in the waiting room. All right. I'm thinking another announcement. We have a date for the FERCog meeting with the select board to go over the Lake Wyola watershed plan. It's for June 6th. So my hope was that we could post that as a Concom meeting and have as many of the commissioners attend as possible. Is that going to work for folks?
What day of the week is that?
The Tuesday, June 6th. I don't know what time. Usually the select board meets usually like around 5:30, but I don't know where it'll be on their agenda.
It works for now. How about that?
We'll just be getting back from our trip, so I'll have to see, the timing and all that, but I'll keep you informed.
Okay. Well, yeah, it would be good to hear the discussion, and this will be a plan once it gets finalized that can be used for helping the town get other grant applications, which is a good thing for other stormwater management projects. All right. Well, we got one more minute, so I think we'll just hold tight for a sec before we starting on anything else. Oh, and we didn't discuss this when we approved the other permit, but do I have everybody's permission to sign for them digitally for the permit that we just approved?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, 6:30. So we have a notice of intent public hearing for the town of Shutesbury for a bordering vegetated wetland restoration project that the town is proposing for lot 032. And what I want to do, because I know there's a bunch of people on the call, is just give you an overview of how the hearing's going to go and what our policies around public comments, so people will know what to expect. And then we'll get into the heart of the hearing. So, oops, sorry about that. So, hang on one sec, I missed my notes. Sorry, give me 1 second, sorry. Lost myself here. How many documents open? Okay, so go. All right, so just to summarize for everybody, in case you haven't been to a meeting like this, the town has presented an application, and our job is to review that application and make a decision whether we can issue a permit under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Shutesbury bylaw, which both protect water quality, water quantity, wetland habitat, and resource areas related to those interests. So we will be looking for information from the applicant and asking them questions. Our goal is to basically come to a determination based on a preponderance of evidence. Preponderance means 51%. Doesn't mean we have to prove everything or the applicant has to prove everything. We just have to figure out if they've kind of given us 51% of the information we need to approve the project as they would like to proceed. So the way the hearing will go is we'll review the project with the applicant and their consultant. The commission will have an opportunity to ask questions. We'll have a back and forth for a while. And then when we're ready and we don't have any more questions, we'll open it up for public comment. So I just want to remind the public that we want to have an orderly meeting. Please do not speak unless you've been recognized by the chair. We have a public comment policy. We ask people to keep their comments under 2 minutes. And if there are multiple people wanting to speak more than once, we usually will make sure that everybody who wants to speak has had an opportunity to speak at least once before we give anyone a second chance to make a comment. And in general, we would ask you just to be succinct and whenever possible, try to avoid being redundant. So if someone else has already said something and you just want to agree with them, it would be more useful for us if you just let us know you agree with them as opposed to repeating the comment. And I just want to be clear that tonight we're looking at a restoration project. We are not reviewing the library project. That has not been presented as an application to us. Okay, any questions from the commission before we go? Got a plan? So who is going to be discussing the project tonight on behalf of the town?
Start it off.
Hello, hi, April's here. Okay,
Gregor McGregor's here, the special counsel for the applicant. I'll be here as necessary. Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
okay, thank you. Welcome. And I should just mention that attorney Beth Goodman, who is counsel for the commission, is also here tonight. So welcome. So April, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe present the project?
Of course. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm here on behalf of the town to speak about the Lot 032 Wetland Restoration Project. For the record, my name is April Dorofsky, and I'm a professional wetland scientist certified by the Wetland Society of Wetland Scientists, and I'm a certified professional soil scientist, certified under the Certified Soil Science Society of America. I have my master's in natural resources from the University of Connecticut, where I reached research biogeochemistry of coastal wetlands. In addition, I'm active in my community. I'm the vice chair of my local conservation commission, and I am the president of the Society of Wetland Scientists New England chapter. To give a little background on the notice of intent, before I go into that, I wanted to mention the notice of intent went through an internal review process here at Wesson O'Neill. It was reviewed by my colleague, Dr. Julian Busa, who is also a professional wetland scientist and a certified ecologist. And with that, do I have permission to share my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, can you see the site overview map?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So the proposed project that we are speaking about today is for the restoration of two bordering
She there? April, we can't hear you.
I got apologies, I lost connection briefly.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is. I wonder if it's your headphones. It just sounds a little muffled.
I agree.
Is this better? Can you
Maybe.
hear me? Let me check a couple more settings here. One moment. Does this audio work any better?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for that. I updated the microphone. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll start from the beginning again. Just in case I cut out before I started. So the proposed project is to restore two bordering vegetated wetlands located within 66 Leverett Road, this lot 032 parcel. These wetland areas were identified and discussed during the ANRAD process that had occurred. Coming in from the driveway, if you head south, the first area is this bordering vegetated wetland BVW2 area where there is a mounded fill pile that is within the wetland. There are invasive species growing within and around this mounded fill pile. There are also native shrubs and trees growing within the pile. There's a tree that is about 8-inch diameter at breast height growing within the pile, indicating that it's been there. The pile has been there for years. This wetland is a forested wetland, and there is a tree line that's located in that area as well. So I'll explain this in more detail, but I'll just, since we have the overview, just show this BVW3, where it will be accessed from Leverett Road, follow the access through the upland portions of the property and through an existing access route. And this is the location of potential fill removal at BVW3. This area between the flags 3A114 and 3A115 was identified as having potential fill based on evidence of more recent disturbance, there is some debris at the base of the tree near 3A113. And during the peer review process, during the ANRAD process, Ms. Emily Stockman of Stockman Associates did identify that this area between 3A114 and 3A115 appeared to be more recently disturbed, and there was potential that there was wetland fill of a wetland in this location. But because of the potential fill being too deep, about 3 feet, only utilization of equipment would allow restoration and identification if there's any fill in this area.
April, could you, this is Miriam, could you, just for the public, explain what you mean by fill?
Or
Can you characterize the fill?
yeah, and when I talk about fill, I'm talking about there's potential, there's a wetland, and if you place soil on top of that wetland, that would be considered fill. You place material on top of it. And in this location specifically, there is a minor slope of soil that is there, and there was some just trash, kind of refuse located, buried within the soil along the boundary where this wetland is, and that led to the peer reviewer and Conservation Commission and us believing there's potential that there was placement of soil within a wetland here, and that area can only be investigated with the use of heavy equipment because the soil is just too deep to move with manual tools like a shovel or with a soil auger.
April, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So at wetland point 3A113 or 114, when we were on the site visit with you yesterday, we were looking at an area of exposed slope. There's clearly buried debris, household debris, plastic. There's a variety of different kinds of household solid waste that's coming out of the bank, and it's very visible to the naked eye. So what inclines you to suggest that the fill and right next to it is soil and not more of that solid waste that we observed?
Within, I believe you're talking about right near this slide location right
There.
here. Yeah, I believe that buried trash would indicate that there was placement of material in that location. There is a mature tree, maybe 10-inch DBH at that location. So any restoration in that area would be removing the soil in the vicinity of the tree, but no tree removal is proposed at this location. And as Emily Stockman had mentioned, that there appeared to be more recent disturbance between these two flags, 3A114 and 115, including this area, which will be investigated.
So that area that we pointed out will be investigated, because it sounded like on the site visit, you were saying you were not going to be investigating that spot.
It will be dug around the base of the tree, but the tree will not be removed. So to the extent that where the tree line is, that area will be investigated.
I mean, what we observed is fill underneath the tree roots.
I understand, and we will explore around the tree roots, but removing the mature tree that appears to be healthy and providing habitat and benefits in that area, it would be my preference to allow that tree to remain and explore the fill around, the potential for fill around that tree and not cut it down.
Well, thank you. Go ahead.
That is the overview of the site. This BBW on the left side of the screen will remain there and remain untouched during this restoration process. To zoom in a little bit more, this is BVW2, the wetland that was on the right side of the previous figure. The limit of work is indicated in these black dashes. Erosion controls are indicated as this pink line with dots. And the fill pile is this hatched area. So the restoration for this area would be to first install the erosion controls around the boundary of the fill pile, and then remove the vegetation. Will require some tree removal that is growing within the pile and shrub removal, in addition to invasive removal. Once that vegetation is removed, equipment like an excavator will be able to enter the wetland and just remove the fill pile to the level of the surrounding wetland. It's possible the fill that is removed will be temporarily stockpiled on site. If that's the case, this rectangle is the stockpile location. There'll be a tarp placed on the bottom, and it will be surrounded by erosion controls, and the material will be temporarily placed here until it can be removed and properly disposed of.
And can you, just for the benefit of everybody here, explain what you were thinking about at the site visit if we asked if it was the water, if the fill is saturated and needs to be drained, what would you be doing?
If it has free water in it, and by that I mean if it's dripping out soil and is too heavy to immediately remove from site, it will be temporarily stockpiled in this location and allowed to, the water would be allowed to evaporate from the pile and can spread it out and move it around and allow that evaporation to happen.
So you're not going to be using any filter fabric? I thought I heard you yesterday saying you were going to use some filter fabric.
Yeah, yes, there can be filter fabric, geotextile, or a tarp beneath this. And the soil that's excavated would be placed on top of this, and the soil would be able to evaporate into the air over time. There's also potential to remove this fill that it will just be live loaded, so loaded directly to a dump truck and removed immediately from the site. Once those steps are completed, the plantings will be installed, and these plantings include 3 trees. The AR is Acer rubrum, that's a red maple, here, here, and here, and also a combination of native shrubs, highbush blueberry, silky dogwood, arrowwood viburnum, and witch hazel. These native species were selected based on their presence on site in this specific wetland, but also based on the expectation that they will be able to survive within this wetland area based on the soil conditions and the sun and shade conditions. The native vegetation, the native shrubs and trees were placed in locations to allow them to spread out. When you plant shrubs and trees, you want to give them room. So they are separated from each other and intertwined and mixed. This area will also be seeded with wetland seed mix, and straw mulch will be placed over it once it's seeded. There are also 2 witch hazels, which are only proposed in the upland area where the site will be accessed. There is some minor tree removal that might be required to access the wetland. So 2 more upland species, the witch hazels, are proposed, and they're spread apart again to allow them to have the proper amount of spread between the species. If there are areas that are in uplands and are disturbed by the equipment, by disturbed, it could be ruts or exposed soil. These areas will be leveled to be flattened to the existing grade, and upland seed mix will be spread, and straw mulch will also be spread. Another benefit of these native species that were selected is that they provide berries, the highbush blueberry, sulky dogwood. They provide berries and food for wildlife and provide benefits for pollinator species as well. So they're expected to survive well in this location, and replacing the invasive species with this assortment of native species will be an improvement over existing conditions. This fill pile area is not currently functioning as a wetland. It's mounded for 3 to 5 feet high or so. Before I move on to the next area, are there any questions?
I have a couple questions. One, you had said you'd excavate down to a level that's sort of even with the topography of the what looks to be the wetland around it, but would you also be sort of looking for a change in the soil? You know, as you're going down, you're almost looking for the top of the original soil, and you'd see a change.
Yes, that's the expectation, that there will be an obvious distinction between this material that was placed there and what would be the historic topsoil layer.
Okay. And my other question, it may be more for the whole project, but since we're just looking at this one, are you guys proposing any long-term monitoring to observe plant growth and make sure that the wetland does well over a couple seasons?
Not at that time, but I think that is something that can be discussed with the applicants.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk more about that with the conditions and sort of the overall project.
Can I ask a similar question? This is Attorney Goodman. Is that all right, Madam Chairman?
Yes, go
Or do
ahead.
you want me to hold my questions until later.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Beth.
The DEP comments
What do you
on,
have? Attorney Goodman, Beth Goodman. Thank you.
thank you. The DEP comments on this application referred you to the new wetlands mitigation guidelines, and you've indicated that you complied with that. And I see in there that the standard is that at least 75% of the surface of this replacement area or this new wetland must be reestablished with indigenous wetland plant species within 2 growing seasons. And I'm wondering if the 3 trees and whatever shrubs you plan to plant are expected to meet that standard.
Oh, absolutely. In addition to the wetland seed mix being spread within that area, that will provide an emergent layer, a shrub layer, and a tree layer. So between all of those species and the stratification of vegetation, they're expected to survive. These trees and shrubs will need to be watered. And so that will certainly play a role in their survival. I'm sure there's wildlife, there can be deer browse or other animals that can damage the trees or shrubs, but I expect these species to perform well.
Great,
Can
thanks.
I ask a question? Did you have another question, Beth? Or
No, that was my question. Thank you.
so I asked this at the site visit, but just maybe you could explain again. So I had 2 questions. One is, what do we expect is the success of the seeding going to be, assuming that this work begins in June for this growing season? And the second question was, did you consider any translocation? What I mean by translocation, I mean a methodology that involves removing plugs of existing native vegetation elsewhere on the site, perhaps in an upland area, that can be transplanted with its soil structure and mycorrhizal networks, because the research suggests that that methodology is more successful than using nursery plants alone. And I noticed you're not planting any whole herbaceous plants. That's really what I'm talking about, is herbaceous plants.
Mhm. In terms of the seed mix, that seed mix is more successful after 1 or 2 growing seasons. So I do expect some herbaceous plants to establish, but it does take time for the establishment. That area right now, based on the site visit, has a lot of sensitive fern in it, not as many grasses or other species. So I'm hoping that the native sensitive ferns in the surrounding areas will also expand into that area and allow faster revegetation. In terms of translocating or transplanting other plants, as I mentioned during the site visit, that is a potential way to restore wetlands, but either removing these native plants from a wetland itself or from the buffer zone of a wetland and putting it in this area would essentially degrade where the site where those plants were relocated from. So the goal for this was to add more natives to the site so that there's a net increase in native species within this lot itself.
Thank you. Do you want to go proceed?
Hey, Miriam, could I
Yes.
ask a question before we
Sure.
moved on? It's related to something that Beth asked, and I'm wondering if who would be on site when still is being removed to determine the proper, when that work is done. So you mentioned that you'd be looking at the soil to try to determine if this was placed fill or if it's the natural wetland bottom. And I'm wondering if you or another soil scientist or wetland scientist would be on site while the fill is being removed to make that determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will be on site during this restoration.
And April, do you
Thank you.
have an agreement with the town for any ongoing monitoring at this point?
I do not at the moment.
Do you want to maybe move on to the other area of restoration and talk about that?
Yes. Thank you. Right now I'm sharing my screen of the BVW3 restoration area, again with the access through upland areas, an existing access way. There were some leaning trees during the site visit, so there might be some minor branch removal if it's needed for the equipment to access this area, but no tree removal is proposed. This area is a little bit more complicated than the other area because of the limits of potential fill are not well defined. And that's the reason why I will be on site as a soil and wetland scientist to determine the limits of fill. The first step of the restoration of this area would include, as always, installing the erosion control measures. They will be installed slightly down gradient of where the sloped area is within the wetland. The reason for that is so that if there was fill identified in this area, we would be able to seamlessly grade into the wetland and have a nice level slope. Once those erosion controls are installed, there are a couple different methodologies of determining where the limits of fill are. The equipment would enter and start further into this area, closer to the flag 3A114. And one option is to dig a trench starting from the boundary of the wetland towards the back tree line to the east. And what that trench will allow will be able to view the soil horizons. So it will essentially be a test pit where I can enter into this test pit and describe the soil horizons to determine if there's any fill and the extent of fill. This is very similar to soil morphology descriptions that I have conducted as part of collegiate soil judging competitions.
April,
And
can I ask you a question? One, in terms of accessing the site, you're going to be accessing, right now, it looks like you'll be accessing from the north is the plan for the excavation,
yes,
mobilization. And I recall on the site visit that there was a large pile of slash and roots and logs somewhere in that vicinity. And I'm wondering whether you intend to, how you get access without moving that slash pile.
the access is clear for the most part. I believe that slash pile is within the tree line in this area. So I don't expect that to inhibit access.
The other question I had was, my understanding is that one of the approaches to doing this kind of delineation is to get two transects, one that's clearly in upland and one that's in what we think is wetland. And I'm wondering how you're accomplishing that with one test pit.
That was just the start of it. So the first test pit would be dug here because it's the kind of furthest southernmost extent. So depending on the results of this test pit, there can be or will be at least another test pit in the center along the side to determine the easterly and the northerly extent of the fill. There's also an option instead of test pits. What could happen is if I determine that the fill is, about 3 feet of depth here, another option would be to excavate out the top 2 feet of this area or 2.5 feet. And I can view these areas and make multiple test holes with the soil auger to further refine that limit. So I'd say there's
and what would you do, just hypothetically, if you don't get to a place where you, within this restoration area, find upland soils, where you are unable to establish an upland line? What would be the, what would you do as the applicant? What would you be wanting to do?
that would be determined on site. I don't expect that to be the case. This tree line is pretty mature, and during the site visit with the peer reviewer and kind of discussions afterwards, I understood that Emily Stockton and I were on the same understanding that, it's not expected that the wetland would extend into the more mature, the area of mature trees. What she described was the area as evidence of more recent fill, which is this area that is cleared. And that's an assessment that I also agree with. Of course, that will be determined while on site, but I do not expect any potential wetland fill to extend into the mature tree area. There's a pine tree, maybe 1.5 foot, so DBH, and multiple other mature trees.
So I'm just trying to understand, because I understand it's not expected, but just for an understanding of the permit and what how the delineation is going to work. would
Mm.
you be coming back to us for additional removal if you were unable to establish the upland line?
That will just be determined based on the circumstances. I cannot say exactly what would happen. You need to determine that on site, but if that were to be the case, no tree removal would be proposed. I'd say it's not in this wetland area's benefit or the site's benefit to start deforesting to chase a wetland line that may have been filled historically
So I'm just thinking,
decades ago.
yeah, I'm just thinking, because we want to make sure that you're able to proceed, and we understand it's important to be able to close this wetland line for any future projects. So want to condition the permit in a way to make things as efficient as possible. So, my sense would be that we would probably add a condition that you'd come back and discuss it with us if for some reason there's something unexpected that happens and you're not able to establish that line.
Yes.
Would you be coming back? Are you planning to come back to the commission for approval of the wetland line once you've collected the data?
If the future project comes before the commission, the wetland line would be discussed at that point. Right now, I do not have plans to, but that may change based on conversations with the applicant.
So I don't know how the rest of the commission would feel, but it would seem like for planning purposes, you would want to get, if you do collect data to establish a line, that you'd want to get that line approved so that there's no surprises as soon as possible, I would think.
Wetland boundaries are very commonly approved during a notice of intent process. So I do not believe the applicant is seeking a separate ANRAD for closing the
No,
wetland at
I
this
wasn't-
area.
No, I wasn't thinking about a separate ANRAD. What I was wondering about actually is a condition where you'd come back to within this permit, that if we could condition this permit in such a way that there would be a subsequent review and approval of a wetland line under this permit. That was my thought.
Can I speak to that? Gregor McGregor, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, please.
We recommend you condition the permit on the data that's collected in the process being brought to the commission, because you have an abiding interest in what's found in the soil and any waste found and the like. And if there is a peer review, that you approve not a delay in the project, but rather you approve the peer reviewer attending the project. That includes attending the test pits and the other, as you say, efforts to learn more about the wetland line. But I have not seen a condition on a small waste cleanup project on town land that says, by the way, also do a delineation of the back door. In other words, the full extent of a wetland line you may need for a future project somewhere on the property. I've not seen that. However, it would be fine to require data be submitted to you, and you can make judgments on it and decide whether you want something between this project being completed and the next project, if there is one. As April says, and I fully support, the delineation of all resource areas that are within a distance from any future project will be done and will be given to the commission as part of the eventual project NOI. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from the commission or?
So can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to go back over the bunches of trees that we talked about on the site visit. And the more as you describe the project and where the line might be, those trees border this line so closely. You know, I am still concerned that, you know, you're not able to get under that or through that to determine anything in relation without removing those piles. If the wetlands extend a little bit further into that.
Mary, you're talking about the debris of
I'm
the,
talking about the wood and the debris, the cut trees and things that are there on the edge of where we expect the project to go to. You know, and we talked about it a little on the site visit about, you know, why not just take that stuff out too while you're there so you can examine those areas. Because you have no idea what's underneath all of those trees and woods. So we talked a little bit April on it. Can you
Yeah.
share what you're still thinking?
Yes, at this time, we're not proposing to remove those trees. They can provide wildlife habitat and keep the carbon source within the site. So that is not the plan right now. But the project is really to restore these two wetland areas. And the project was also, the notice of intent was sent to Mass DEP, of course, as part of this project. It was reviewed by Mark Stinson, who's the circuit rider of the Western region. He has served as the circuit rider for a very long time. Many of you are familiar with him, knowledgeable, experienced, and diligent in his reviews. And I just want to make sure the commission and the public understands that the comments that were issued by Mark Stinson at DEP raised no compliance issues with the notice of intent. And I can tell you, you know, this project's being proposed based on recommendations of the commission, and the town is going above and beyond to voluntarily carry out this restoration that not only meets the performance standards, but it also enhances the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act, specifically for public and private water supply, protection of groundwater supply, prevention of pollution, and protection of wildlife habitat. Removing these historic piles and invasive species and replacing them with native species will be a net benefit, and that also supports the purpose of the Shutesbury wetlands bylaw.
Madam Chair, could I ask a clarification, I think, of Ms. David's question?
go ahead.
Ms. David, did you mean the cut trees, the trees that have been cut and left as slash should be removed, or do you mean living trees that are near the edge of this pile?
No, thank you. I'm talking about the packs of dead trees that have been cut down and branches that somehow have been piled up quite high, sit right on that borderline of where they expect to determine the wetlands. And my question is there fill underneath that? You don't know what's underneath it. I do think it prevents habitat from getting to the wetlands because of the piles. And my question really also goes to, at some point, we're going to remove those. While the equipment is in there, wouldn't it be better to remove them rather than at a future point when we're trying to establish these wetlands, bring equipment back in to take away these piles? You know, so my question really has nothing to do with, you know, the project and what you're doing. It has more to do with, you know, what are we doing with those piles? What's under the piles? And a secondary question is, should they be removed while we're disturbing the soil and doing everything that we're doing, rather than a future time when you'll then be going over newly established, trying to grow wetlands to be able to deal with them. So I wasn't questioning any of the other pieces, just those. Why not look at those piles too?
And just as an observation, I mean, those piles presumably were placed there by the town, but whether they're in a wetland, we don't know, but they're clearly in buffer zone. And the commission would prefer to not have woody debris like this in the buffer zone, which is a protected resource area. They should be disposed of in areas that are not under the jurisdiction of the commission. I do have a question, April, and maybe Beth Goodman, you can clarify, because you and I were having a conversation about this. And my understanding was that part of the notice of intent was the intention to do a delineation. And we know this is a disturbed site with an altered landscape, and that delineation in other parts of this property have been complex. And so I'm just trying to think of a way to make this process more streamlined to benefit the applicant, really. And certainly if the applicant doesn't want us to approve a wetland line under this permit and what wishes to wait to some later date for a future project, that's their purview for sure. But I was trying to understand if there was a way for us to review this data under this permit, just in the interest of being more time efficient, I guess. Beth, do you ever thought about that?
I think Mr. McGregor was clear that that is not the purpose of this project, that they're just removing some fill piles that were identified, and that they're going to restore those wetland areas that they can find, and that when they come back with a notice of intent for the building project, they will identify any wetland areas that are within the, project area. Is that right, Mr. McGregor? I mean, I don't mean
That's
to.
a good summary. That's exactly right. On the other hand, we could agree to, if you want that slash, I'll use the term slash, removed on the edge of the wetland, you can ask for it now. April can say what she thinks.
Yeah, I didn't hear.
Now you could make a condition if you wanted. That's for the applicant in April.
Thank you. I do appreciate, Madam Chairwoman, the idea to try and streamline this notice of intent and the approval of the wetland delineation line, because defining the boundary of that area is part of this project. So if there is a summary memorandum that the applicant can provide, prepared by me based on photos and a summary taken during the site visit, and the wetland restoration, I think as long as Mary Ann is okay with it, we'd be willing to provide that information to receive the commission's approval of the line.
Let me ask the commission a question, if I may. Commissioners, if we were to review this wetland line that they're going to hopefully document, and it might be eventually have to be reviewed anyway under a notice of intent, would we want to get a third-party reviewer to do that at this juncture under this permit? We want a TPR for this NOI.
You mean to attend during the excavation?
So maybe to attend during the excavation and then advise the commission as to whether she or he concurs with the whatever the applicant reports.
So I don't know. So the way I see it, this maybe being, to me, makes most sense, is more what Gregor McGregor was saying, just that, this application is to do the restoration. So we're going to issue a permit to give them permission to do the restoration. For them to then try to come back to us to get approval of something, we've already issued a permit to do the work. So it would have to be some other kind of a document approving a delineation, which that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So this project, we're issuing a permit, they're going to do the restoration, they're going to collect all the data as to where that wetland line is. And when they come back with their NOI for the building, they present all that data and show where they think the wetland line is. And with that application, they're asking for approval of that wetland line. That just seems like the right approach to me. The rest of it just gets really confusing as to what kind of a document would you use to approve the wetland line, where they'd have to almost file another RDA just to get the new wetland line delineated. You know what I mean?
Okay. And are we, are we in agreement that we do not feel we need a third-party review?
Again, at this point, I don't think so, because, I mean, if you did, you'd be wanting them to be reviewing the NOI that's already been submitted that we're talking about tonight. If you're talking about the wetland line, they're going to bring that data and that wetland line in their NOI for the building, right? Potentially. So at that point, maybe we have somebody look at the data sheets, look at the photos, look at what was done, and sort of do a review of, of the wetland line, along with a review of, the entire building project.
So are we talking, so there's the question, do we need a third-party reviewer to review what they determine or where they determine the wetlands, how deep it is and how much fill to take out? Does that part need to be a third-party reviewer to concur with the conclusions that they come to with their data?
I don't think that we do. My opinion would be this project where it's a restoration project, they're going in, they're doing the excavation as they've proposed to do. They kind of have a method at this point in BVW3 to do a trench, kind of as April was proposing. That's her method of trying to sort of define where they feel the limit of the wetland is. I feel like their approach is fine. Fuss and O'Neill will certainly have scientists like April out there to be part of the field effort, making these decisions. It's really up to them to then, bring that information back to us to prove to us where that wetland line is. And it sounds like that would be in the next notice of intent.
If I could, Madam Chairman?
Sure, go ahead.
I think though you could ask them to document what they did.
Oh, yes.
Give this like she said, a report, soils, pictures, within a certain period of time after the work is done. They could give advice when they're gonna do the work, so that if a commissioner is available, they can also go and watch, and so you have a record of it. Even if they're going to come back in with an NOI, what if they never did? I don't know. It's just nice to have the confidence of documenting what was done.
Yeah, we could certainly have a condition to require a report at the end.
Okay. All right. And I, just to you make sure we've addressed this piece of it. The wetlands, our local wetlands protection bylaw has a resource area that protects subsurface streams. And I just want to ask April if she has any opinion about whether there are any subsurface streams. And I think that the commission from past discussions has regarded this as intermittent streams. So subsurface streams being the subsurface component of intermittent streams.
Based on my observations, I don't expect to see any intermittent streams or buried streams.
Whoops. Scott, do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm listening and good, and I concur with where Beth was at too in terms of third party. I think most important was to have a professional wetland scientist, soil scientist on site to determine the extent of fill, and I'm confident that they're going to be able to do that.
What are you doing?
Oh my God.
You hurt yourself.
The people who are not speaking, please mute themselves. Thank you. So what we have done with other restoration projects is that we have required a monitoring period and monitoring reports by a qualified wetland scientist. And so one of the options that the commission may want to consider is putting in a monitoring component that would require that there be a consultant involved in the project over time in order to provide that information. So I just want to make that observation that that would be possibly something that the commission might want to be looking for. And I don't know if the applicant has any thoughts about that or.
I have a couple thoughts.
Yes, go
This
ahead.
being a project on town land, the commission can come and go as it pleases, can have members individually or collectively, quorum or otherwise, come to site visits all they want. It's not being private property. Hudson O'Neill being local, April being as open as any consultant could possibly be to communications during, after, before, outside of the work she's doing. I don't think a paid environmental monitor, which somebody has to pay for, would be appropriate. With a commercial site, an industrial site, a problem site, a hazardous waste cleanup, maybe. But this already is a voluntary cleanup being done by the town on its own property. It's at best, a household solid waste cleanup and foreign soils cleanup of the sort that, in my experience, the DPW does on a Saturday morning with somebody from the commission watching. It's already heavily scrutinized, and I think you've already outlined a wonderful plan for making sure it goes according to Hoyle, and you are aware of what is learned, and during the process you can make changes. We expect and invite you to put that usual condition, by the way, to make it demonstrable after 2 growing seasons that all layers of vegetation have successfully taken, which April's confident will be meeting the state standard and then some. Thank you.
Marianne, I see your hand raised.
Sorry. So I just would like to suggest that the commission could partner with the town and do the monitoring instead of the town incurring an additional expense. And, you know, and Gregor just said it, you're right here in town. Many of you drive by on a regular basis. It's open property. And, you know, the town is voluntarily undertaking this project. So I'd like to see us partner in ensuring the success of the project over the long term.
All right. Commissioners, do you want to have any questions? Are there any questions about this?
No,
I think I've had all my questions answered.
Let me look at Scott. Do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, maybe we should open the floor for public comment. I see one hand raised, Mary Lou Conca. And again, please keep your comments succinct.
Hi, yes, I'm Mary Lou Conca. I live on Wendell Road, and I was listening to the attorney McGregor say something about the site being okay to go ahead and do whatever is being planned to be done in it. But at one time, Miriam, it was declared a 21E site. And I just wonder what happened with that. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that. My understanding, Mary Lou, is that the area that is slated for restoration is not part of the 21E process. It's a different part of the parcel, so it is not part of that. And we don't have any jurisdiction over 21E, so we're not really reviewing that tonight. It's not
Okay.
our purview.
So in that light, then, the lot 032 is actually being discussed as two separate pieces of land?
We're discussing a project on Lot 032. But we don't have any role in permitting anything related to any, the DEP 21E process. It's not our role, so that's not what this application is about. Matt, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Mary Lou. So the MCP is a release-based program, not a parcel-based program. So the RTN 121489, which is located on the southern end of the property, has a defined disposal site boundary. And within that disposal site boundary is what is being governed under the MCP and the MCP process. So the entirety of the site is not a 21E listed site. It is that release condition in the rear of the property. That doesn't mean that there's separate parcels. You can have a release condition that does not encompass the entirety of a parcel, and that's what we have here. It's a very large, elongated parcel. The release condition is a couple thousand feet behind this, front portion of the property, which we're discussing tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Mary Lou, you had your question. I just want to make sure there aren't other comments, please, because we're
all right,
not,
thank,
this
yes.
is not a forum for us to be talking about 21E. Thank you.
Yes, Miriam, thank you. Thank you, Matthew, too.
Anybody else? Anyone else? Could you lower your hand? Is there anybody else who has any public comments or questions? No? I'm not seeing any. So I'm gonna close the public comment period if there aren't any public comments from anybody. All right. So I guess what I would like to do right now is that we're gonna discuss a permitting decision, and I like to include as much as possible a dialogue with applicants before we close the public hearing, because once we close the public hearing, we're not allowed to have any discussion or accept any new information from the applicant or from the public. So around this permit decision. So I want to kind of, wow, I'm being assaulted by cat. Hold on. I want to make sure we're clear. And I think one of the questions that's come up here is around monitoring. I guess I'll just say my personal preference would be that we put a monitoring component in, as we have with other applicants or other landowners where restorations were involved, where they were required to retain a specialist and to provide reports and to provide mitigation for any invasive species that might take over, and possibly additional planting or seeding if a 75% vegetation success was not accomplished. And while I appreciate the desire to try to do things in a cost-efficient way, and I want to just acknowledge here that the commission has decided not to retain a third-party reviewer, and part of our decision is that we feel like we can manage this permit on our own, but we're also mindful that it is expensive to hire specialists. So with that in mind, I can say for myself, I would appreciate having a monitoring component that involves the town keeping a wetland specialist in the mix, monitoring it periodically. We would specify the frequency of the reporting and what we want in the reporting until a certificate of compliance was issued. That would be my druthers. I don't know if other commissioners want to weigh in or if you have thoughts about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. And I think, like you said, we'll have a schedule. I mean, I don't want to, we can talk more about it, but to me, it's twice a year that a specialist goes out, looks at the site, evaluates plant growth, evaluates invasive problems, provides a small, even just an email, small little report to the Concom saying, I visited this day, this is how it looks. It still needs a little bit of growth over the next season, that kind of thing. You know, pretty simple, but I think that's very common for this kind of thing. And it has a 2-year limit to it usually, because after you get to 2 years and you want to have that 75% growth. So yes, I agree.
I would say in Amherst, they do a 3-year limit is my understanding. And if we do a 2-year limit from the time we issue the permit, we're not going to have 2 full growing seasons because the growing season is almost, you know, it's already started. So
But does the time limit need to be growing seasons, or does it need to be until it achieves the 75%?
it can be either. And you can issue a permit. My understanding, you can issue a permit that says a minimum of a monitoring period with a condition that you have to reach that success level, and it could be extended should you not meet that vegetation standards. But at this point, if it was 2 growing seasons and the permit's issued now in May, so it would be into 2025 because this growing season is almost all done. So it would have to be after the end of the growing season in 2024. No, after 25, help me out here. So, you know, if it was 2 full growing seasons.
The way, Madam Chairman, this is Attorney Goodman. Can I speak?
Please help.
Yeah, so looking again at the guidance that Mark Stinson at DEP directed your town applicant to review, it does speak to environmental monitors, and it specifically says that requiring environmental monitor for the project will help ensure the project is built and avoid the most common causes of failure. So they're recommending that you do have a monitor, and the monitor should be appropriately, they want the monitor there 1 month after planting and seeding to see that the planting and seeding is taking place. And then after 1 growing season to observe vegetation development and regulatory compliance. And then again, after 2 growing seasons. So you can't get after 1 growing season until you could go in the fall of 2023.
Yeah, to get to 2, I'm sorry, I was getting tongue-tied. To get to 2 full growing seasons, it would take us to the fall of 2025. Because this growing season, we aren't going to get a full growing season.
Yeah, it depends on when they plant. I mean, if they want, you could just say after the first growing season, they should review, and after the second growing season, and let them just figure out when
what I would suggest, because this is what we've done with another project that was a similar kind of size restoration project, is that we had twice-a-year reports in May and November. And if we wanted, we can schedule site visits to inspect after we get those reports. And then discuss it at a meeting. And if there's any changes, if, for example, if we feel that there need to be some mitigation for invasive species, or there needs to be some additional planting, we would then inform the applicant what needs to happen around that, that there would be some agreement and discussion about it at that stage at a public meeting. But that would be what I would suggest.
I think April's got a comment there.
Yeah, go ahead, April.
Hi, thank you. There are 2 items that I want to discuss. That inland wetland replacement manual is for wetland mitigation. So if you are filling a wetland to develop, and therefore propose to create a new wetland to mitigate for that loss, that's when you use this wetland replacement guidelines. That's not what's being proposed for this project. This project is restoring wetlands that were previously wetlands, and they will be restored to functioning wetlands. So that inland wetland replacement guideline is the purpose of it does not quite meet what we're proposing here for the restoration. It can certainly be used as background information to help make decisions, but it does not match the proposed restoration.
So what are you proposing for monitoring?
Wait,
or
let me
suggesting?
just, Mary, if I may, just, I just want to make one clarifying component that, that's true, that manual is for, replication, but my understanding is the scientific standards are essentially the same, whether you're replicating or restoring. And so the best practices for replication also hold for restoration in terms of monitoring, because even with restoration, and my understanding is that with either, there can be a fairly high failure rate in terms of revegetative success. And there's been discussion about what the best practices scientifically are because there's a high failure rate. And so the practices for mitigation also hold for restoration.
I agree in some sense, but I just want to make sure that the commission and public understand that there is a distinction between mitigation and restoration. Creating a brand new wetland where there was only an upland is much more difficult of a process than restoring a wetland and removing fill and restoring the wetland to what it was before. The other piece that I wanted to mention was if there were to be conditions related to vegetative success. I'm going to share my screen again. This BVW3 area.
We don't see your screen yet, April.
Okay, I am seeing some issues. Let me just try.
Mary, did you have a comment? I kind of jumped in there. I want to make sure you got a chance to talk.
No, my comment really was, is anything we've been saying what you plan on doing for monitoring? What was, it doesn't specifically outline that I saw in the proposal what the plan is for monitoring. And I think that's what she's trying to get to. So that was my question.
I
April, do you wanna
apologize
share?
again. When I share the screen, for some reason it has been crashing, but there was no proposed monitoring within the notice of intent. But the piece regarding monitoring I wanted to discuss was that the BVW3 closest to the restoration area right now is sparsely vegetated, and that condition is how the restoration is designed. That is, sometimes wetlands and forested areas are sparsely vegetated, and that's the case in this area. So I don't expect it to revegetate to 75% if a wetland were to be restored this area. And so I would, ask the commission to reconsider the vegetative coverage percentage for that area based on the adjacent, more natural area functioning with minimal vegetation.
April, can I ask you a question about that? My understanding when Emily Stockman did the peer review that all of BVW3 was understood to be highly altered and disturbed. And we understand that there was fill removed from BVW3 in the vicinity of the restoration area in 2021. And we don't know how much was removed. And I don't want to go back and relitigate that because it's really not all that relevant right now, except to say that we don't really know whether this is a healthy wetland that's kind of functioning as a vernal pool and is not vegetated, or whether it is an emergent wetland that will develop as a bordering a fully vegetated wetland in time, if it's left to its own deserts and not disturbed any further. Do we?
Yeah. No, there's no certainty on that, but the way that the wetland is functioning now, you can see in the Mass DEP mass mapper, there's a hydrologic connection exactly where that line is between 3A114 and 3A115. And what that means to me is this is kind of a headwater wetland where the groundwater is emerging. So to me, it's not surprising that that's sparsely vegetated, because you mentioned vernal pools. This area seems to function similar to, the hydro period you would see of a vernal pool, which can also be sparsely vegetated for emergent areas. And it will be seeded so that New England wetland seed mix can take, but if it's inundated for too long, that seed mix will not revegetate as well in that area. And if we have a wet summer, I would imagine that area to have standing water.
Well, I understand sometimes instead of 75%, commissions use a 50% standard. In your opinion, is that more realistic?
For that area, I would believe so. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any more discussion, or Commissioner, do you feel like you have enough information?
I would just, my only other comment to that would just be, I guess, when the applicants come to the decision that they think it's fully vegetated, that we should have a visit and agree upon it is or it isn't. Since the standard itself is a little.
Yes, I agree.
shaky.
We would need to have site visits and reports, and we would have to be reviewing this, absolutely. I see one hand raised, Penny Kim. Do you want to have a comment?
I have a totally non-technical, non-appropriate comment to make. And that is, oh my goodness, I'm thinking about the macro, you're dealing with the micro here. I'm losing track of the forest for the trees, that kind of thing. I've lived here 60 years. I've driven by that site. I understand that the protection of natural resource areas is something we're all committed to. I'm just really sort of hoping that we can concentrate on our end goal here. And I know that you as a commission are charged with all of these details. And I just must say, I am impressed and overwhelmed, but I hope we can keep sight of the forest figuratively. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, do we have any more questions for the applicants?
No.
Sorry, just
Go ahead,
one
Beth.
more question. I guess if April could maybe just describe how she would see these wetlands, like what would define success for both of those two wetlands? Like if she was to go do a monitoring, what would she be looking at? Or if she had to like write up sort of a little summary of what are the success characteristics?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. For wetland monitoring, it's similar to wetland delineation. You look at the vegetative cover percent and species, document the soils and any indicators of hydrology. In terms of the amount of species, I know there's been 50–75% thrown around because this wetland restoration is aiming to restore the area to match the surrounding wetlands. That's really what I would be using as a reference point if the understory is vegetated 75% or more in BVW2, then that would be the goal. If it's sparsely vegetated in BVW3, that's what the restoration is designed generally after. In addition to, I mean, BVW3 does have more shrub plantings along the borders to add some more vegetation, but does that answer your question?
Yep, thanks.
One last question I realized I didn't get answered. April, what are you expecting is going to be the end slope and the side slopes? What is the grade going to be, you think? What do you
I'd say the goal for the grade is as shallow as possible to minimize erosion. But in the case that the slope needed to be a bit stronger, then there is provisions of erosion control blankets to be added around that area and seeded.
We usually require erosion control blankets for any slopes that are 3 to 1 or more. Are you expecting slopes of 3 to 1, or you're thinking you're going to shoot for something more gradual?
I'd say we shoot for something more gradual, but it's hard to tell.
The other thing we didn't discuss is that in the NOI, realizing it before we close the hearing, want to make sure we discuss this. The plan is to create a topsoil, 6 inches of topsoil with some loam or some form of topsoil and leaf litter. We got an email from the highway department asking if we would consider allowing the highway department to recycle any of the fill that was removed. And I'm assuming part of the intent of that was to recycle it for use with this restoration. Is that what the town is wanting to do?
No, the soil that's removed will not be reused on site. It has, at least in BVW2, has invasives in it, and that material will be removed and properly disposed of.
Okay. And what kind of soil will you be using to for that construction of that top 6 inches?
It'll be like a loam amended with organic material to about, I think it said 7 to 10% organic matter percentage.
And like a sandy loam?
Could be sandy loam, could just be a loam on itself. That area around BBW3 is sand. If I recall correctly, more of a sandy loam in that area.
And what would be the source for that? Where are you going to get the loam as well as the leaf litter?
That will be determined. I cannot remember the exact name, but I know someone had recommended a local farm that produces clean topsoil, but based on costs, that would be explored by the town.
All right. Very good. All right. Can we move on, do you think? We motion to close the public hearing?
We'll make a motion to close the public hearing for 66 Leverett Road, lot 032.
All right, is there a second?
Second,
Hey, David,
Aye.
on aye. Harrington,
I,
Khan,
Aye.
and Wilson.
aye.
All right, so let's talk about what we want to do for the permit. I've written a draft, which I can share, I can screen share. In it, we need to make some revisions based on the discussion tonight, because it wasn't clear to me whether or not the delineation was going to be part of this order of conditions. So we'll have to edit this. But I do have provisions for monitoring, and if we're in agreement that we want to have monitoring.
Yeah, I think so. I guess we can talk about, like how often and how we sort of want to write it. I like the 2 growing seasons, but I also like, if prior to that, it looks like there's 75% vegetation coverage, then it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know how you wrote it, but I guess we could look at it.
Well, I
when
think,
you-
I don't know if I wrote it that way, but I think that's a reasonable, and I think that we can wordsmith this to make that clear that it would be contingent on our some decision that I don't know how we're going to do this. I think that the way I have it written is that we would not issue a certificate of compliance until at least 2 full growing seasons have been completed. So it would be, doesn't mean we would necessarily be requiring that the applicant do anything. If we feel like things are going along well and think there's progress being made, then we would just wait and the applicant would submit for a certificate of compliance after that time period.
Yep. Sounds good. And did you have it written as sort of somebody would come twice a year?
Yeah, well, I can screen share this and we can go through it, and if it's okay with you guys, and this is for people who are not here, this is kind of how we do it, is we kind of go through this together with it in the open meeting, and I have a draft here, but we're gonna decide whether we want to make any changes. And then we will vote on the permit. So let me open this up. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
And it a little bit. Okay.
Looks
So
better.
some of this I've taken out of the ANRAD because we always have a finding of facts before we get into the order of conditions. And so in the finding of facts, some of this is information that came out of the ANRAD and our ORAD. So the commission finds that the project lies within jurisdictional resource areas as defined by these statutes. On March 10th, 2023, we issued an ORAD based on this set plan. And these following, I don't think that this needs to be, the following findings are hereby incorporated. And actually, here, I think this should go like that. The following findings concern jurisdiction areas protected by both the Wetlands Protection Act and the Shutesbury bylaw. Based on the plan set, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. The commission approves the boundary of the 1-foot buffer zone, also known as the adjacent upland resource area, or AURA, within the ANRAD review area, including the no contest buffer zone boundaries, but excluding the buffer zone boundary associated with these 2 flags. The BVW boundary between these 2 flags has not been established, reviewed, or approved. Therefore, the associated buffer zone boundary has not been established, reviewed, or approved. The buffer zone aura for this resource area, I guess this is kind of saying it over and over again. So, the commission approves the boundary of BVW1. I don't even know if we need to include this since it's not part of the review of this project.
I don't think so.
Okay, the commission approves the boundary of the BVW2 because it is part of the project. The commission approves the boundary of BVW3, including this line. The commission does not approve the BVW boundary between 114 and 115. The BVW wetlands, BVW 1, 2, and 3, I guess we can take 1 out because we're not really reviewing that, are protected resources areas under the bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act. The aura, and I guess this should probably, because I say here, based on, this should probably be a separate. This should be 3, I guess. The aura is a protected resource area under the Shutesbury Wetlands Protection Bylaw and its regulations. Any significant alterations of the aura must be approved by the commission. And then I have here subsurface streams are protected as resource areas. The aura of subsurface streams. That was in the ORAD. Do we need this or not? This part about subsurface streams.
I don't think we have identified any.
Yeah.
It's just a statement. Okay. Then here's more findings. Hang on. The commission finds that BBW 2 has been impacted by unauthorized fill. The commission finds that BBW 2 must be restored. So that's coming straight out of the ORAD, and that's what the applicant is doing right now. The commission, excuse me. The commission finds that the flags has been impacted by unauthorized fill. The commission finds that it must be restored and the boundary established. That again is language coming out of the ORAD. And that's what the applicant is doing currently with his notice of intent. The commission finds that the aura of BBW2 contains unauthorized fill, which the applicant chooses not to restore at the present time. The fill consists of buried trash and debris. The commission finds that the aura of BBW2 must be restored at some later time. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. We're okay with that?
Yep.
7. Finds that the BBW of BBW3 and surrounding aura contain additional unauthorized fill, which the applicant chooses not to restore at the present time. The fill consists of solid waste, buried debris, trash. The commission observed on a May 24th site visit that there is considerable debris, both superficial and buried, in BBW3 and in the aura of BBW2 and BBW3. The commission finds that this portion of BBW3 must be restored at some later time. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, if you don't. All right, and I'll fix this later. The commission finds that there is a large slash pile of brush stumps, roots, and logs in the vicinity of BBW3 near this flag. The commission finds that the debris has been deposited without approval by the commission and constitutes an alteration of protected resource area under the bylaw. The commission further finds that this material must be removed from any area subject to the jurisdiction of the commission under the WPA or bylaw, including the aura of any wetland. That's all right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. We're almost done with this part. The applicant proposes to remove 1,300 square feet of BBW2 and BBW3. I think I have these numbers correctly, as part of an enhancement restoration project. Okay. As part of the project, they propose to determine the extent of fill in BBW3 and to confirm the wetland boundary, should they be discovered. And then
They're not confirming the boundaries, right?
They are, and that's what they're collecting the data to confirm them. They're not submitting them
Okay.
to us, but
All right.
why don't we say they propose to investigate? How's that sound? And
That's fine.
to document. How's that sound?
All right, that's better.
It's better. Work will conform to the site plan, and then this is just boilerplate that they rebutted the presumption of an adverse effect on protectable resource areas. So then, are we good there and move on to conditions?
Yep.
Okay. This is all boilerplate.
Could I chime in? Sorry, before you move along too far.
Sorry, what?
Could I chime in before you move on too far? I have a
Oh.
comment about number 9.
We've closed the public hearing. But if it's an error, like, that's fine, but we can't really have a discussion.
Yeah, it's a wording
Sure.
piece that we're proposing to remove up to 1355 square feet of fill. Because it should also be up to 725 for BVW 3. BVW 2 is defined because that's the fill pile, but that's why 3 has a maximum because it's undefined.
So does that look correct to you?
So you can remove the up to for BVW 2, that 630 will be restored for 2.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
Miriam,
Yes.
after 11, you have numbers 3 and 5.
Yeah, I know. I'll fix the formatting later.
Oh, okay,
I
okay,
don't want to spend a lot of time trying to
okay,
get,
that's fine.
I will fix it. All right, so this is all boilerplate that we always put in our permits. So here's where it's a little different and we should talk about this. So prior to the prior to work commencing on the project, the applicant shall submit to the commission the credentials and proof of a contract with a qualified environmental professional with expertise in wetland delineation, soil science, and wetland restoration, who shall be responsible for overseeing and monitoring all activity within resource areas and auras under this order of conditions, including establishment of erosion controls, removal and disposal of fill, planting and seeding, mitigation of invasive species, and monitoring. The said contract will ensure, shall ensure that the environmental professional is available to oversee the project until the commission determines that revegetation restoration process has met the required standards for vegetative success in condition number 41 below. The commission must review and approve the choice of environmental professional. The environmental professional shall submit regular monitoring reports to the Conservation Commission per condition 40 below. The environmental professional shall immediately notify the commission of any matters that require review or approval by the commission. The applicant shall be responsible for ensuring that there is an ongoing contract with an approved environmental professional. And I'm saying proving the credentials because, you know, I think we're all in agreement that we would, that April is more than qualified. But if for any time there's a change in who the professional is, we would want to review that. Does this look all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah.
You still there, Scott?
I am.
That-
Yep,
I
that
know
sounds good.
Are you able to see this, Scott, or are you just listening?
I'm just listening.
Okay, well, that's why I'm reading stuff then. Okay, pre-construction. Pre-construction phase conditions. And Scott, the stuff that I'm skipping over is because it's just boilerplate that we put in all of our permits. So it's nothing unique to this project. So no clearing of vegetation or disturbance of soil shall occur prior to the approval of erosion controls by the commission. Minimal disturbance of shrubs and herbaceous plants may be allowed or is allowed if absolutely necessary to place erosion controls where required. Fine.
Yeah.
The applicant shall notify the commission at least 7 days before the commencement of the excavation work so that the commission or its representative can observe the excavation work for the restoration. The applicant shall provide the name and telephone number of all persons responsible for compliance with this order. Is that all right? So if we want to observe.
Yeah.
Okay, construction phase. Wetland flagging shall be maintained until a certificate of compliance, or it will be refreshed. Either remain or be refreshed before any certificate of compliance, because we would want to see where the wetland flagging is. Limited tree removal within the resource areas is approved by this order. Removal of existing vegetation shall be kept to a minimum necessary for the removal of fill and installation of erosion controls. Removed vegetation or wood chips must be disposed of in a location outside of any jurisdictional area protected by the act or the bylaw, including the aura.
Okay.
The approved erosion controls and flag restoration areas shall serve as the limit of all work. Workers shall be informed that no machinery, storage of machinery or material stockpiling or construction activity is to occur beyond this line at any time. Prior to any work under this order, other than the installation of erosion controls, the applicant shall remove all of the woody debris identified in finding number 8 above. And I have to change that number because we changed the so that was the what we had discussed. This debris must be disposed of outside of any jurisdictional area. We will arrange a site visit and approval by the commission prior to any other work. Do you want to do it that way? Or do you want to just?
Wait, is how this is woody debris that's different than right just above you were talking about?
Well, there's whatever vegetation they need to remove for the restoration, which is there's trees and shrubs. But
Right.
this is the stockpile of slash.
Oh.
I'm okay with taking
Yeah, I'm not sure that's necessary.
the last sentence or the whole commission.
Just the last sentence.
We don't need to have another visit to inspect it,
No.
but we do want them to remove it. Is that what we're asking?
Yeah, I didn't go to the site visit, so I guess I don't know how much extra work that would be for the town to remove all of that.
I don't know.
I don't know, I didn't go.
And I think that they were gonna do that, right? Anyways, right?
It's right. They're gonna need to get access in order to do the work that they have to do in the area. They're gonna remove that brush anyhow.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I think they were going to maneuver around it, was the understanding, and April is nodding. So my understanding is they were not going to remove that pile. So, and we can't take any comments from the applicant at this point.
Right. But
So
then they have to go back in with vehicles and such at a later time to do that. It seems like it would just be easier to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's okay like it is because that's what they intend to do. And if they don't have to take it all out because they can maneuver around it, then that's great.
Okay.
well, wait, that's a different thing, Mary. Either we're asking them to remove all of it or we're not asking them to remove all of it. Not asking, but we're requiring, I mean. So we have to
Oh.
decide, are we requiring this or not? Because they may remove some of it anyway, but it wasn't part of the proposal. So this is an additional condition. We have to decide whether we want to do it or not.
Then why don't you put shall remove necessary, I don't know how to make it.
Again, like I didn't go to the site visit, so I don't know how large of an area it is. If it's a really large area and it's a whole lot of extra work, I'm not so sure.
I'm
we should-
going to propose that we take this out.
Okay.
Because I don't think we're clear about it, wanting it. Erosion controls shall remain in place. No trash dumpsters shall be allowed within any resource area or its aura, subject to protection under the bylaw or the act. Okay. Erosion control shall be routinely inspected and adequate stockpile. Okay, that's all boilerplate. I don't know why I haven't read. The stuff in red is not boilerplate. Excavation and vegetation removal shall be scheduled for a period with no significant rain expected within 48 hours. Is that right?
Yep.
Sure.
Soil scientists shall be on site during the fill removal and BVW restoration, and this is not, shall be on site during the fill removal and BVW restoration, and to determine the extent of hydric soils in the BVW restoration area. The soil scientist shall document at least 2 soil profile descriptions in the area. The soil scientist shall also document the fill removal process with color photographs. I think this is redundant. I don't think we need that. The soil scientist, I don't can put it all in one condition. Hang on. It's small. Shall observe, note, and photo document the quality of the fill as it is removed, and document by field notes and color photographs any signs of potential unclean fill, i.e. waste materials, trash, petroleum odors. Note, MADP regulations permit the use of reclaimed materials such as asphalt and concrete smaller than 6 inches in size. I don't know if that's really necessary in here.
No.
Then within 7 days of the restoration work, the commission shall be notified via mail regarding the status of the wetland boundary. I think we are saying no.
Right, they're not gonna delineate.
Do we want to say within 7 days of the restoration work, the applicant shall submit a report
Yes.
with the report from the soil scientist? Soil scientist with the above identified
Just above information, yeah.
information. Okay. All right, once the fill has been removed, the side slopes shall be graded, seeded, mulched, and reinforced. I don't think we need this because it's in the notice of intent already. Should this excavated fill be found to be saturated, the fill shall be dewatered on site for an appropriate length of time sufficient to allow turbidity to settle out before removal from the site. Dewatering shall be accomplished by placing the saturated fill atop staked filter fabric surrounded by staked erosion socks or straw wattles. At no time shall saturated fill be live loaded onto a truck or placed in a dumpster for disposal. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, BVW delineation. This is the part that we probably want to delete. To determine the extent. Okay. So I think that we would take this out because we're not.
Yes, we're not doing, okay. No.
Okay. Once the fill has been removed, okay, this is also not necessary. And I'm gonna have to fix the numbering, I get it. No material of any kind can be dispersed in any resource area under our jurisdiction. No fuel, oil, or pollutants can be stored in any resource area or the aura. The applicant is responsible for disposing of all excavated fill in accordance with all relevant local, state, and federal regulations. And outside of any resource area under our jurisdiction. Within 30 days of the excavation, the applicant shall submit a report to the commission indicating the quantity and type of fill removed and the disposal location. Do you want maybe this would be in the
part of that other report, the report.
Yep.
Just sort of summarizes the whole event and including
let me find
any
it.
sort of wetland findings.
The report. Well, shall observe and note and document the quantity of fill removed, the quality of fill as it is removed. Okay, now we got it. Is that right?
Yeah.
7 days. I don't know. That's a pretty tight deadline for a report. Let's say 30 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see a nod from April. I'm really.
Please.
Thank you. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. should the activities result in any suspected or known releases of hazardous materials or pollutants into a protected resource area, the applicant shall document the release and notify the commission. I'm just saying this because yesterday I saw a crushed oil can in the wetland. And I am not entirely confident that there is no hazardous materials in this fill pile.
Sure, if they find a big 55-gallon drum, we want to know.
Yep. No soil enhancements are approved except for the use of on-site. I don't know if they was on-site. Of leaf litter. None of the excavated fill shall be used for soil augmentation. For topsoil replication, the applicant shall only use a sandy loam soil, the source of which shall be provided to the commission. The applicant shall submit a request to the commission should a need for additional soil augmentation arise. That's not all right?
Yep.
Yeah. The applicant shall be responsible for watering the restoration area at appropriate intervals during dry periods to ensure vegetation success.
Nah, I don't think that should be their responsibility. The monitoring I get, but I don't think we should require that.
Seeding in the restoration area shall occur within 5 to 30 days of final grading. Barren areas should be stabilized by seeding if work on the project is interrupted for more than 90 days. I think this is unnecessary, this part. If the condition should occur, the applicant should request a determination of whether seeding. I don't think we need this. Additional reseeding or an alternative approved by the commission shall be applied to the restoration as needed. That possibly. So there, we might at some point, if nothing takes, we might require reseeding at a later point, like after a growing season. The applicant shall document any known releases. I guess we already did this. This is already in there. It's a repeat. Okay, and again, I know the numbering is out. Within 30 days of the initial restoration work and before any twice annual monitoring reports, the applicant shall contact the commission to arrange a post-construction site visit. Is that all right? Yeah. Within 30 days of the completion of the initial restoration work, the applicant's environmental protection will provide initial monitoring. Well, we already have this, I think. So I don't think we need this one. Because we already have all the information in a report that they're going to give us.
Yes.
Post-construction monitoring. The applicant shall be responsible for monitoring the restoration area for 3 years from the issuance of this order of conditions. Is that what you want to do? Or 2 full growing seasons? Or we could say monitoring shall include site inspections and reports produced by an approved environmental professional twice a year, no later than May 15th and October 15th, beginning in October 2023. Monitoring reports shall include inspection of the site, assessment of the restoration progress, and remediation for revegetation failure or the establishment of invasive species. That's not right?
Yeah, and I think, do we want to say something like monitoring restoration area for 2 growing seasons, or until the establishment of 75% vegetative cover? That way, if it's earlier, they're done.
Okay, so we'll say for 2 full growing seasons. From or until the commission determines that the restoration project has achieved revegetation success. Right? Is that all right?
Yeah, I guess we had talked about, in BVW 3, 75% was probably not going to even happen. So.
Right. So down here, yeah. So we want to say 50%.
Okay.
including any volunteer hydrophytic species and any replacement plantings. Should the project not achieve revegetation at the 50% standard, at a conclusion of the monitoring period, the commission reserves the right to require additional monitoring or replanting. The line intercept method shall be used to assess revegetation progress. Okay. At the conclusion of the monitoring period, the applicant shall submit a final monitoring report accompanied by an as-built plan that demonstrates that the restoration area was constructed according to the plan submitted in the notice of intent. The final monitoring report should indicate the conditions of the site and describe in detail how the functions of the wetland have been enhanced. The commission reserves the right to conduct site visits. Should the wetland restoration permitted be unsuccessful in reaching revegetated success, the commission reserves the right to order the applicant to take other appropriate remedial actions. I guess we've already said that, haven't we? Have we said that? That we might require, reserves the right for replanting. So I think we've already said that. I don't think we need this.
Okay.
And then I put in 2 perpetual conditions for pesticides, herbicides, and slow release fertilizer within the aura. I don't know if you want this or not.
Sure.
We've been putting it in all of them, so.
We have.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So I have the, let me pull up just so you can see it. And I know it's getting late, but we're going to move through this. The Form 5, the bylaw Form 5. Let me pull that up. And there we go. This took some time, you guys, putting this together. And if you know, they put quite a bit of time into this. All right.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So here's the same form. Hearing closed tonight, issued tomorrow. Proofs, plan sets. Findings under the jurisdiction of the bylaw. No aesthetics, no aquaculture, no recreation. Just all of those things approved. And then in terms of alteration, for BVW alteration. And going forward for this, for other orders of conditions, the thought here was to have, if there's an aura alteration, that we put in the square feet of alteration for the aura. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Just again, comment about the form. Is there a riverfront on here?
No, because the bylaw doesn't mention riverfront.
Okay, right.
So I didn't add all that because it
It's
would be
not-
covered under
yeah.
the act, not the bylaw.
Mhm.
One of the funky things about the bylaw. Okay, so all of this is just boilerplate, the same standard conditions. And then valid for 3 years. And then our signatures. How's this look? The recording information.
Looks like it's got everything.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you just make sure the book and page is on there?
It was, I did not check to make sure it was correct. I should probably check that. Let me make a note. I was thinking about that, but I should double check it. All right. So are we good with this? Motion to, we make a motion?
I make a motion to issue the order of conditions for lot 032, wetland restoration project.
Okay, second,
Second. Second.
David,
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington,
I,
Khan,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Do I have everybody's permission to sign digitally for you?
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
Good. All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marianne and April. We look forward to seeing this and to moving along to the next stage. So thank you for your patience with us tonight.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, we just have a couple of topics and then we're done. So let me pull up my agenda with my notes, please. So bear with me. Okay. So we have the emergency certifications for Dudley Pond. So we need to ratify the emergency certification that was requested by Lois Brown for the Beaver Dam breaching and the installation of a flow protection device at the dam. That has been successfully installed and it is bringing down the impounded water nicely on Brown's Pond, on Dudley Pond.
A motion to certify the emergency certification of Dudley Pond Dam.
Okay, second.
I
Second.
Okay, David,
Jinx.
Font, I, Harrington,
I,
Con. Scott still there? We lose Scott.
Aye.
Okay, and Wilson.
I'm here. Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Then we also got a emergency certification for another beaver dam breaching at the Montague Road culvert maybe a week ago, which we need to ratify. And this was a situation where there was some heavy rain being anticipated, and even before the rain hit on Saturday, the water level in the upstream pond had really risen quite a bit because the beavers had really expanded on the dam. And I had back and forth communication with Becky Torres and Tim, Tim Hunting was away that weekend. So on Saturday morning, Mary, David, and I got out there with Steve Sullivan and Becky, and Steve was able to breach the dam using hand tools instead of using the heavy equipment, which was great. Because, you know, we had a concern that using heavy equipment might lead to difficulties controlling how much water gets released, how quickly. And there was an incident at the beginning of May, as you all know, where that we approved a beaver dam breaching, and unfortunately more water drained faster than was expected. And it led to some concerning conditions down at the downstream dam where water was leaking through the stone face of the dam in places where water isn't supposed to go. You're not supposed to have water leaking through the stone face of a dam. So right now, so we need to certify that emergency cert, the second one.
No, motion to certify the emergency certification of the Montague Road culvert at Dudley Pond.
Yes, thank you. A second,
I second,
David,
Aye.
I, Harrington,
I,
Wilson.
Aye.
Sorry, didn't forget you, Scott.
Aye.
I got you out of order. So I did get a call from Tim Hunting today saying that the water has built up and the Beaver Dam has built up, and we only issued that emergency cert for 10 days. So he was asking to have it extended. So I wanted to the Board of Health needs to issue another 10-day permit for the breaching, which I emailed them about. But I want to ask the commission to ratify a second emergency certification so that they'll have another 10 days to work on this culvert. And they are in the process of getting a quote from Mike Callahan of Beaver Solutions to install a flow protection device.
I
Which,
think as long as it's hand done again, now that it's demonstrated they can hand do it.
yes.
Um,
So is that what we want for the second one, that it only be done by hand, not by any?
yes. Once we've demonstrated we can successfully do that.
Okay. Are you sure? Because I know that there was concerns that it might be unsafe for employees. And, you know, that was kind of the dilemma, was how do we make
Well,
sure employees know what-
we all watched it with Becky there, the town administrator, so they were able to do it.
they could just. Yep, okay. So I will amend those conditions to say that it has to be done by hand. So the other piece is that for the flow protection device, do we want to advise them that they can apply for this under an emergency permit, or do we want to ask for a RDA for it?
I think an
think-
emergency.
What-
What, Mary?
You're talking
Go
about
ahead. I think they should do an RDA myself. I'd like to see what they're gonna propose this time that's gonna resolve this issue. You do it on an emergency there. I'm not sure that covers getting the information that we need.
Well, my only issue, it just is gonna keep being an emergency. Right now, we're gonna issue another emergency cert for them to go in and do it. And 5 days, however many days from now, the beavers are just gonna block it up again. It's sort of an emergency right now that needs to be resolved, and that's Mike Callahan's and Beaver Solutions. They do that all the time. They go into an emergency situation like this, and under emergency permits, they will breach to a certain extent they need to, and they'll put in a beaver deceiver that needs to be done. So I just feel like we just should keep moving on. I know there it might take a bit to get the quote or whatever, but I just think we need to get to a point.
Yeah,
with the
have to
situation.
do it under an emergency cert.
Yeah,
Well, I do feel really good about them using Mike Callahan. I mean,
Yeah.
he really knows his stuff, and I was very impressed with what he did with the beaver flow protection device that he put in at the downstream dam. So if they're going to use him, I think that'd be great. So as long as they're using him, I'm okay with it under a emergency cert.
yeah, I mean, I've been down there a few days, really, I've never seen the water that high. It's, and whatever they do now for breaching, it is just gonna get, beavers are just gonna come back, and it's not really gonna get resolved until we do something like put a beaver deceiver in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I will keep you posted on that. So last thing, but not least, was that I just want to give you guys an update on plans for the regulation update, the bylaw regulation updates. So I have a set of edits that I got from our peer reviewer, Patrick Garner, and I went over them with Janice Stone, and I have to finish editing them. Then I would like to propose that we just release it to you and to the rest of the public and put it up on the website for review sometime in the next week. I think people have been waiting to see it. And I just would want to make sure that everyone understands that it is a draft and that it may be subject to other revisions. And so, it is not the final anything. It is a preliminary document. But I think then we can start having discussions at meetings about it once we have something to look at.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I will let you guys know when it's up on the website. It's a big document, so I'll probably just put it on the website, let you know. And then, we'll just keep talking about it at meetings. We're going to schedule a public hearing for some time in June, hopefully. I have to coordinate things with Patrick Garner, see what his availability is. I do think we want to have him attend at least one public hearing in June because the funding that we hired him under is being clawed back by the town as of July 1st. So if we can do the hearing with him, otherwise, if we want him to appear in July, we would need to use some of our other funds under the bylaw fee fund to pay for his presence. And my preference would be to not use that fund up. There isn't that much in it. But we do have that as a resource to fall back on.
Okay.
If we're talking about it in meetings, I guess when it's not a public hearing, do you mean talking about it like we would actually go through it and, you know, make changes and stuff, or is that held off until the public hearing? I guess, like say we went to just talk about it in a meeting, would we be taking public comment?
I think we probably wouldn't take public comment. If we want to have or we can decide that. I don't know what you want. If we're going to talk about it in a meeting, I'm thinking maybe we should have Patrick come for that and then come for a public hearing. How does that sound?
Yeah, I just actually don't know. Maybe it's a good question for Beth Goodman. You know, I wasn't sure if you were proposing to put it on the webpage, send it out to the Concom, have everybody just review it on their own, and then have a big discussion about it all at the public hearing where we can take public comment. Or can we actually just like in a regular meeting, start going through it and not take public? Yeah, like I don't really know what the rules are for that.
I think, well, I'll let Beth answer, but my thought about it is we're meeting twice in June, and we talked about the idea of having a meeting on a Wednesday so that Janice Stone could participate, because Janice is never available on Thursdays. And I think there had been maybe some discussion about the middle of June, I'd have to look at my calendar to have a meeting with Janice. So we could, for example, meet on, have a discussion on Thursday, June 8th, and maybe schedule a public hearing, maybe the following week.
On a Wednesday.
On a Wednesday.
Okay.
Beth, did you have a comment? Beth Goodman?
No, I don't think there are any prescribed methods of a board adopting regulations other than that you have to do everything in a public meeting. But you can have a public meeting, which is a working session, and then offer the public later time to comment. I don't see anything wrong about that.
And in terms of a public hearing posting, if we post the public hearing 2 weeks in advance, would that be sufficient time to?
Yes, again, it's not like you're doing an adjudicatory decision where you have statutory requirements for the notice. You don't. So you just want the public to be informed and understand, and then you want to have, public opportunity to comment on your drafts before you approve it.
Well, why don't we, so I can post it in time. So Wednesday, the second Wednesday in June would be June 14th. Would that work for the commission for a public hearing?
Yeah, I probably won't be in town that day for me. But,
Okay, well, we want you there. We would
well,
want,
I'll be gone that whole week. So if you're looking at that week at all, I'm gone.
do you want, I think the 9th is too soon, probably. Wednesday, the 24th.
21st, you mean?
Oh, I'm looking at May. I'm sorry. Yes, hang on. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
seeing.
we could do it that day.
The first. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay, at 7 p.m. Oh, Scott?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna be out of town. Not sure I can make it on the 21st either, but I'm fine with the commission moving on without me being there too.
Right, so if we're gonna have a public meeting, it doesn't mean we're gonna vote on it.
Right.
And for June 8th, how about if I try to get Patrick to come to the June 8th meeting so we can have a discussion with Patrick? And I would imagine we would not take public comment during that discussion.
Okay,
Is that
if
all right?
that's, o-
Or maybe we would, I don't know. Would you, I guess you can decide, but we should be clear.
I'm not sure you'd want to take public comments at that meeting. You know,
yeah,
Okay. All right, good. All right, we got a plan. Very good. All right, I don't think I have anything else on the agenda. It's been a long meeting. Anything we
motion
need?
to adjourn.
Okay, motion to, it's 8:44. Mary made a motion, second.
Second,
Okay, and thank you, Beth, for coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Okay, David.
Aye.
Font, I, Harrington.
I,
I think he's saying aye.
It sounds like Morse code from Scott for I.
And
Aye.
yeah, and Wilson. Right.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. All right, good night.
Bye. Thanks, Scott. Beth,
night,
thanks-
everybody.
Thanks for attending.